Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker and welcome to episode 321, Detachment and Choice, Why Over-Explaining and People-Pleasing Aren't Communication. Well, welcome back to this month where we've been talking about something many of us struggle with but don't always have language for, and that is learning how to stay connected to ourselves when we're afraid of disappointing others. So each week this month, we're looking at what pulls us out of our center and how to come back to choice, self-trust, and grounded boundaries. This week, we're going to be focusing on detachment and why so much of what we call communication is actually fear trying to keep us safe. And I know over-explaining and people-pleasing may feel like communication, but they're actually attempts to just manage our discomfort. And control outcomes. But what we know is, and what I teach so much, is that true communication requires healthy detachment and choice, not performance or persuasion. Because a lot of people think they struggle with communication when what I find is they're actually struggling with detachment. They're explaining too much, they're couching things in a softer way, they're justifying a lot. Because they're hoping if they can just say it in the right way, they'll finally be understood. Maybe they'll be accepted. Maybe they won't upset anyone. Or that explaining ourselves is how we earn understanding. But communication isn't about managing reactions. And it isn't about earning permission to exist. So what is over-explaining? It can look like justifying your needs, your feelings, your limits, telling them why you need this, why you feel the way you feel, why your boundaries are your boundaries. And again, sometimes that makes sense if there's someone close to you, but not when you have fear going on. If you're trying to share it with your best friend and they are affirming that, that's cool. It's good for them to know the vulnerable details because they're close to you. If you're putting out all these details with someone that you're worried about how they're going to take it or what they're going to do with it, then that's over-explaining. Because that silence feels unsafe for a reason. But over-explaining isn't clarity, it's just your anxiety trying to protect you. There are big fears underneath of it for us. It's that fear of being misunderstood, fear of disappointing someone, of conflict, rejection, people not caring, people just withdrawing love. And really just this learned belief that your no isn't enough on its own. Explaining once for clarity is not the same as over-explaining. Over-explaining happens when you're trying to convince, not inform. And I want you to think about, do you do this? Do you struggle with over-explaining? Who do you do it with more than other people and why? Like, who are the people you feel like you need to give the whole backstory and all the rationale as opposed to a grounded 2-word sentence and they don't question it. They don't give you a hard time. They say, okay. So that's over-explaining. It's essentially trying to give people so much information that they'll be okay with what you're asking for or what you're saying no to. So now let's talk about why people-pleasing is not communication either. So people-pleasing often sounds like saying things like, I don't mind, when you really do. Or, oh, it's fine, when it isn't. Or whatever you want, when deep down you're actually resentful. So it's agreeing outwardly while disconnecting inwardly. Your insides are not matching your outsides. And that's why it's not communication. It is self-erasure disguised as harmony. And yeah, that sounds harsh, but unless we look at it in kind of a harsh light, we may not understand how disingenuous it really is. Because again, all of this trying to convince others, you're also doing with yourself that you're just being nice, you're just being kind, or you're just being whatever. So when we're lying to them, we're often having to lie to ourselves too. And yes, a lot of people don't like when I use the word lie, but it can also be very motivating for people to change because we don't want to see ourselves as dishonest. So there's some big costs to this kind of communication. And the biggest one is you stop trusting yourself. Remember I just said a moment ago, you're not being honest. Your insides aren't matching your outsides. We can't trust ourselves if we don't believe ourselves. Or we don't like who we are, because you really can't like who you are when your insides don't match your outsides. Another big cost is connection. Like other people don't actually know you. And I could get dramatic and say, do you really know you? Do you really know your truth? I know for my clients, it can take some time to really tap into what is their real truth. Another big cost is the resentment that builds and the depression and the anxiety, all the physical manifestations of this stress. It's very stressful to keep two people going, one on the inside and one on the outside. And ironically, you just feel so unseen. But that's because you're not showing yourself. So people-pleasing and over-explaining are just forms of control. People-pleasing is your attempt to control someone else's feelings and reactions and their view of you, like how they see you. And that's why it's all about us. When we boil it down, it's really selfish and it's all about us. We're trying to control the stability of the relationship because we're afraid, and probably for good reason. Either we have past relationships that were very tumultuous and chaotic and maybe even toxic, and also maybe the person in front of us isn't terribly emotionally mature, and they've shown us that. It's also an attempt to control whether you're going to be liked or approved of. So basically, so you can feel safe. Your safety then, guess what, depends on people not being upset with you. And I don't know about you, but that sounds terrifying. That's a prison, and it's pretty dangerous because we really don't have control over that. People can be upset with us when we've done nothing or said nothing. So you can't really feel calm and peaceful, right? Those eggshells don't go away. So instead, we want to work on healthy, loving detachment. And I was just talking to a client the other day about the resistance, the hurdle that people have to get over when they start working on detachment because they're so afraid that it means you're being cold. It means distance. It means not caring. It means cutting people off. And sometimes it does require some distance and not connecting with people as much as you used to. And some people do go no contact eventually. But that's not detachment. Detachment is letting other people have their reactions. Doing the grief work, like we've talked to you before about too. Like you can't do detachment work without doing some grief work. And where you can go kicking and screaming to acceptance. That it could be 3 different outcomes in this situation, and it's going to be what it's going to be. It means letting go of responsibility of how other people take your truth. Detachment means staying within yourself, meaning staying connected to your values while you're speaking. What are your boundaries, your values, your beliefs, your needs? And the big piece about detachment is allowing choice. For you to be in a place of choice, and detaching meaning letting go and allowing the other person to have their choices. That's the hardest of, especially when it comes to people that they love and care about, like their kids or their partner or their family. Because other people's choices might not end well. And then we have to grieve that. So detachment is really just that ability to speak clearly without trying to manage the emotional aftermath. So letting go of control, essentially. And I think this is where it becomes real communication because it's genuine, it's your truth, it's grounded, and it's not performative. There's empowerment, there's not pressure. So when you have done enough work on detachment, you can figure out how to choose what you say. You own what you say, and you own what you're trying to do with that. Like, you don't manipulate, you don't guilt, and you don't otherwise come off as passive aggressive. You're trying to keep the boundaries and thus take ownership of your stuff. Like, what are you really trying to do with telling her that? Like, what's your agenda? What are you hoping will happen? And if we have some kind of agenda of an outcome, we need to go back to the drawing board. You choose how much you share too, because you're not focused on the outcome, just what's comfortable for you. And you're also detaching from what maybe they want to know. Maybe you have someone who's being really intrusive and they don't have great boundaries. Just because they doesn't mean you. Just because they want to know all the details of your relationship with this other person doesn't mean it's their place to know or that you want to tell them. And you can choose whether you want to keep engaging. Again, this is based on whether it feels right or safe for you. Or hell, maybe you just don't want to. Do you ever think of that? You just don't want to have this conversation this evening, and it's not a pertinent conversation. They just want to know things about you. Without detachment, we're going to be reactive. Our words are going to come out reactively, probably not so nicely. It's always going to be a fear-based response. You're going to end up over-explaining to calm yourself because, like we said, it's me kicking in your fear from past experiences. And you're so afraid that if you can't keep the situation calm, you're not going to be safe. And a lot of this, too, can be your fear of them walking away. Or you won't feel okay if they disconnect. Like, there's some deep stuff we have to work on here when it comes to this. Communication is never just communication. Real communication, I think, happens when you know you have a choice and you work on practicing getting used to letting go of the idea that the other person may not like it. So clear communication is concise. You boil it down. You give pertinent details, yes, but you don't need to go overboard. What is it really for you? What is the concern? What is the ask? What is the boundary? What's the reason you changed your mind? And it also, so importantly, matches your internal truth. Clear communication doesn't require a defense either. And it leaves room for silence, for people to metabolize what the other person just said. And so if you struggle with detachment and assertive communication, you're not going to know what to say. And so here are some examples. Like, I'm sorry I'm not available for that. Or that really doesn't work for me. And I love the phrase, it really doesn't work for me, because it doesn't say anything about them. It just says it doesn't work for you. There's no attached to it. There's no I can't believe you effing asked me that attached to it. There isn't any enmeshment there where you're still trying to get them to see and get them to understand. No, you're just telling them about you. You're saying things like, I just need time to think about this. Or I'm choosing something different. And you get to decide whether that other human is someone you want to tell what you're choosing and why. It may not be a safe relationship for you to do that. They may not have earned your trust enough to that you want to give them details. So why is this so hard? And why is that so normal? Well, because a lot of you learned early that honesty led to consequences. Maybe over-explaining kept you safe. Maybe you were questioned or shamed or judged or ridiculed or ignored. And so then you didn't feel accepted or safe. So people-pleasing preserved your connection. People-pleasing starts out as parent-pleasing. Remember that. And that silence, if you find yourself filling in all the spaces without punctuation, silence once meant danger. Because you didn't know what was going to happen in the next 5 seconds. People could be fine. They could yell and scream. They could shut down, withdraw love. And so these patterns were adaptive to help you survive. But survival strategies aren't communication skills. In fact, they're usually self-protective And they're going to get in the way of healthy communication, ironically. Because usually they're pretty aggressive and or passive aggressive, and they're not emotionally honest. Remember, self-protective means not being vulnerable. Maybe not telling someone the truth. Maybe not being so assertive to ask for what you need directly. So there are good reasons if you struggle with these. You came by them honestly. Because again, like I mention here all the time, think for a moment about a 4-year-old. And a 4-year-old tells you exactly what they want, think, and feel and don't like, and they don't care. Because that's their truth. That's how you started out too. Your environment after that probably made it hard to continue being that 4-year-old. So this week, I just want you to take some time and sit with this. And I just want you to notice, I don't want you to try to change yourself yet if you haven't worked on this. I want you to notice like one moment when you feel the urge to explain so much more than you should. Maybe you want to soften or over-accommodate. You just take a minute, again, with curiosity and compassion, not judgment. What am I afraid will happen if I stop talking? What would it sound like to say this more simply? What if they don't have all the extraneous details? So just notice. Now, just doing that alone gets you out of your limbic system where all of these responses are coming from. And it helps you to neutralize it. Like, I wonder why I'm doing that. So that becomes a curiosity question, not a judgment. Remember, all that fear and judgment, a lot of it is in your limbic system response. But thinking is not. So sometimes you don't need better wording. I think you just need more trust in yourself. And that's the work that I love to do, is help people glue themselves back together and build that wonderful self-trust. And I was just talking to someone earlier today about my course, Find Your Voice, because in order to be assertive, in order to be a clearer communicator, we have a lot of background work to do. We got to work on identifying healthy needs and honoring our own and our feelings and our boundaries and maybe our family of origin work and maybe some old traumas and some ways we've put up with things we didn't deserve. And to have a safe place in the group coaching and with me and in the self-paced learning to identify those things, then it makes it a lot easier. And you're going to want to communicate more clearly. I'm also, which I'm really excited about, just finishing up my ebook to get you thinking about how to ask for what you need. So look for that. The link is in the show notes for this episode, but I'll also put some stuff out on social so you can connect. It's an inexpensive download to really get you started. So today we continued our focus on choice by exploring how easily communication can just become performative, right? Like a way to manage discomfort, and how so many of us were taught that being clear means saying more and softening your message and keeping other people comfortable to basically manipulate, right? Instead, we talked about what if you imagine not doing the people pleasing and the over explaining. And we also talked about why it might be hard for some of you to just do that naturally. And the exciting part is how you can change that. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope this was helpful. If it wasn't new information, hopefully it was reaffirming. And I'm here if you need me. There's a link in the show notes to reach out. I'm right here. All right, so pay it forward. Keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.